Hi lovelies, my name is Jessica and welcome to Makeup Misfit and welcome to the most exciting, the most anticipated makeup collection video that everybody loves to watch and the final installment in my series this year, eyeshadow palettes. Now, I have tried to film this so many times and it has just been a disaster after disaster, so I am hoping to just kind of get through this unharmed and just let this be as smooth as possible. So I apologize for how long this video may end up being. I'm just going to try and get this done all in one shot and let this just be easy, be flowing. So I might be a little bit slower, but I want to get through this. So before I get into it, a few palettes. If you watch my channel and you see any palettes in some of my videos that are not in this video, they're probably in a declutter pile that I did a little bit ago. A few palettes, I'm still a little unsure about what I want to do with them, so I do have them in here. We will chat about them when we get to them. But first and foremost, we are going to start off with a palette that I know is in my collection. I just don't know where. So I broke out the Raw Beauty Christy and Pure palette a little while back because I was debating using it this year for Pan That palette or just wanting to get a lot more use on it. The beige matte shade I wanted to use to set down my lids. I have a pan in one of the shades and I cannot find it for the life of me. I know it's here. I'm hoping it's going to turn up soon. But I wanted to get that palette just first and foremost because I knew if I didn't mention it in the beginning, I would forget about it. And I wanted to let you know that I actually do have it and that it's not sitting in that declutter pile, but it is sitting somewhere. So I have everything grouped by brand. We are going to start off with ABH because I just have a couple of things to mention. So again, if you watch my channel and you watch my Paranormal Pantivity project, you know that I've been working on my Soft Glam and Arena palette. Long story short, I only have 4 shades left from both of the palettes, so it's a combination of the two, and this is what those shades are looking like, and that is what those 2 palettes are looking like. So I thought it was a smart idea to depot them because I saw somebody do that. Yeah, depotting it didn't quite work. All of the shades that I kept were very dry, they were crumbly, so I decided to just get rid of everything and keep the ones that I really wanted to work on and finish off. So this is what we have remaining left. So I don't know what is from which palette, but I do know it's a combination of the two. So I'm just saying that this is what my Soft Glam and Arena palette is looking like now. So sorry, a little bit of a spoiler for Paranormal Pantivity, but you will see, and I'll explain a little bit more in that video as to what happened, but that's what those 2 palettes are looking like. So that means that I have one fully intact ABH palette, and that is my Amrezy palette. Now, I reached for this about maybe a couple of weeks ago just to get a look out of it. I really didn't think, or I couldn't remember if I had used this at all since I had purchased it, which is going on to 2 years sometime in this year. So I wanted to get some sort of use on it, and I used this Barb shade, and oh, I knew why everybody loved that shade so much. If you saw my eyeshadow singles collection video, you would know that it has so many different shifty shades and I love everything. But this shade is just super pretty as well. Even if it's not from an indie brand, I think it's still good. I really enjoy it, and I'm so excited to get a lot more use on that shade. But just this palette as a whole, there's a couple shades over to this side that I probably wouldn't really use as much. They're just a little bit too deep and too dark for me. But I think that I could still get a lot of use on this palette, and I'm really excited to start to eventually, one way or another, focus on this palette and see how much damage can be done. So those are the 2 from ABH. Now we're going to chat about Colourpop. And the first palette that I have is Going Coconuts. This was the first palette that I purchased from them. And prior to doing that, I actually looked at all of the shades and I told myself I knew I was going to use all of them. So of course, this is a very neutral palette. And mine's a little bit switched around because it kind of fell, but the shade just happened to pop into other places, and then when I opened it I kind of realized that, but I didn't actually like rearrange it into the actual order yet. So this shade here is actually Lovely Bunch, which goes up here, And if you can see in there, there's a slight little pan. I had that in Panless Eyeshadows. I really enjoyed that shade. I knew I was really enjoying this shade because after I purchased this palette, these were kind of the two that I was gravitating towards. Cocoa Crush here is beautiful. And I didn't realize until just recently that it's actually a Super Shock shadow. And I've never had a Super Shock shadow. And after using this and realizing that that's what it was, I know why people enjoy them so much. There was a split second where I was so tempted to just buy an actual Super Shock, but I told myself no, I didn't need to. I wasn't going to do that. So we are holding off, but I'm happy with this palette. Now, from when I purchased this to now, these two shades right here, I think are going to be the ones that I'm really not going to reach for because they are a little bit too deep or too dark for me. I could probably blend them out and make it work, but we'll have to see how it goes. But as a whole, I still really enjoy this palette and I like the color story, and I am happy that I have this one. So another palette that I have is the Little Ray of Sunshine, which I love this color story so much. I love sunflowers. I think it's beautiful. I had this shade in Panless Eyeshadows as well. You can see the pan in there. There's actually a few little ones. I think this is beautiful. Now, my only thing is it's an all matte palette, which is fine, but with where I'm at right now in my makeup, I need a little bit of shimmer. I need something to just pop on the lid, even if it's in the center just or the inner corner, just to give it a little bit of something fun and exciting. So I don't reach for this palette as a whole, even though I want to. Now, with that being said, I think this packaging is adorable, and what I want to do is actually turn this palette into an empty magnetic palette, and I feel by doing that I can keep this color story in here, but I can also add other singles and create something a little bit more and just kind of extend on this and throw in those shimmers that I'm missing. So I want to do that with this palette, and then I also am debating doing that with this palette. This is my What Dreams Are Made Of palette, the Lizzie McGuire collab. I love this palette. Now, this shade was in Panless Eyeshadows, so I've had all three palettes, one shade from each in Panless Eyeshadows from last year, and I had pan on all of them. It took some time with the mattes, but I really enjoyed this shade. I have done a few looks with this palette, and I enjoyed them each time, but again, this is a palette that I will not get rid of. Lizzie McGuire was my life as a child. I loved it so much and like really enjoyed Hilary Duff as a person as well. So this is a palette that I don't think I'm ever going to want to get rid of. But eventually I would like to turn this into an empty magnetic palette as well. And same thing is whether or not I use more of these shades or not, I can still kind of throw in other shades that I feel are going to give each of these palettes a little bit more of a whole look. At least this one has some shimmers, but I can throw different takes into this palette as well, different singles to create different looks and stuff like that. So if anybody knows how to turn these Colourpop palettes into empty magnetic palettes, please let me know down below, because I would love to be able to do that with these. And I think that having these packages as empty magnetic palettes would just be like super cute in my collection as well, because I don't want to get rid of them, but I would like to kind of just play around and see what extensions I can do with these actual color stories. So let me know down there if you know how to do that or know somebody who may know how to do that. I've seen it done before, and I've seen people like have them as empty palettes, and I'm so curious as to like how they've gotten that far. We're gonna chat about Too Faced next because that is my largest group of palettes from a brand. So first we're going to start off with these little tin packaging ones, which I think are super cute. I really do enjoy these palettes. I have 5 of them, and the first 2 that I purchased was Salted Caramel and Gingerbread Spice. So we'll start with Gingerbread Spice. The reason why I bought this one was because I never had the full-size tin package, and I wasn't actually interested in it. But I decided to get this little one because I found that the curated color story in this was more fitting for me. And I really enjoyed using this after I purchased it. I used it quite a few times, and I actually wore this on Christmas. I think it was like for dinner, and I paired a few of these shades together, and I really liked it. So that kind of gave me the motivation to want to use this palette again. Now, when I first started using it, I was gearing more towards this side, but as I look, this is more of like a little sunset vibe look that you could get, and I'm really excited to actually try out just these 4 shades here and see what kind of look I can get. And maybe, you know, for a lighter day or something, focus on those 4. Of course, trying to combine different shades from either side is what I do too. But if you really want to kind of break it down, you have that quad there, you have that quad there. And I think they're both just super pretty. Now, the Salted Caramel palette, when I bought them both, this was the one that I reached for more. I just seemed to gravitate towards it more. Again, you could kind of do, you know, the little quads, but I feel like it's not broken up the same way. But I really enjoyed reaching for this one. I loved each look that came out of this, and I'm really happy that this is one of the palettes that I have in my collection because I just thoroughly enjoyed how good it was. So we're going to chat about the newest one because I had to hunt this down. So this is the from the holiday collection for 22. You're So Hot palette, but this was only on the Too Faced website. It wasn't at Sephora. So after Christmas at some point, I took a peek on Too Faced's website and this was gone. So I had to hunt this down and I eventually found it on Cult Beauty. So that's where I bought it. I bought it on sale there. So I think in the end, it kind of worked out for me because I got a little bit cheaper over there than I did or would have off of Too Faced's website. But I love this. I don't know what it was, but something about this color story in the photo just grabbed me so hard. So I'm really happy that I have this. It's beautiful. It's so cute. The packaging on this one is just adorable. Now, there are quite a few of these that I just found the packaging was so cute. The Christmas Coffee one from last year, the Secret Santa one from this year as well. But I didn't purchase them because the color story inside just didn't get me. So I don't want to buy them just based off of packaging. But this one is a combination of both, and I'm so happy. I am like over the moon that I was actually able to find this on Cult Beauty and purchase it and have it delivered here because I was so disappointed when I found out that Too Faced website didn't have it anymore. And I was a little sad that Sephora didn't carry it this year because that was the one palette. I would have bought that over the Secret Santa one. I have Let's Play and Tickled Peach left. I bought both of these off Poshmark recently. So Let's Play is one that I had in my Sephora wish list, love list, whatever you want to call it. And I'm really happy that I have this one now. Even if I did buy it off Poshmark, it really hasn't been used at all. So I'm happy that I have this. I think the color story is super cute, very pretty, very me, simple, every day, can just throw it on. I haven't quite reached for it yet because it is still a little bit new, but I do feel like I could just throw this on as an easy everyday look. Something that has a little bit more color than just using your neutral brown shades. And then Tickled Peach, I'm so unsure about this one. I was so excited when I found this and I decided to purchase it. And I do like it, but I feel like it's a little bit too close to Let's Play. Now, I'll just kind of try and show you guys here without destroying anything, I hope. But this is what these two look like. So you can see that there's differences, but they are very similar. And if I had to choose and only pick one, I would pick the Let's Play over the Tickled Peach. But I do think that they're both super cute. So I am going to hold on to both of them. But I don't know how much use I'm actually going to get out of this one now that I have it. I don't know what it was about this palette necessarily that really made me like want it. I think the packaging is kind of cute. It's not like the best, but I don't know. We'll have to see where this one lays in the future. But for now, it's going to stick around. And we'll just have to see how things go. So we're going to chat about, actually, where did that come from? Okay, so this is the Teddy Bear palette from Too Faced, and I love this thing. I guess there's some mixed reviews where some people aren't really a big fan of it, but I enjoy it. So I have to be careful because the shade that I'm using to set down my lids, sorry for blinding you, this shade right here is starting to crumble because I've been using it so much. And this shade I have in Panda's eyeshadow, so I have it on my lids right now. But I've done a few different looks with just this palette as a whole. This one was one of those run out the door kind of palettes. So I did a look with this side, I did a look with this side, and I really enjoyed it. I like how this works. I like how it performs. I like the looks that have come out of it. I really enjoy the fact that it is a little and slim packaging. Easy to just throw in my purse and bring to work if I need to. And I really like this. Based off of this one, I was debating the Too Femme palette, but I've heard it's not as good as this one is, and if this one has mixed reviews, I'm unsure about that one, so I'm just gonna hold off and keep this one for now. Like as on its own, I'm not gonna get the other one, but I really do like this palette, and I'm happy that I ended up purchasing. I got that one at Winners, I think, so it was even better because I didn't even pay for like full price for it. The only Too Faced full tin packaging that I have at the moment is the Pumpkin Spice palette. Now, I'm going to show you guys this one next, which was, or slash still is, the Chocolate Bonbons palette. But between these two, these were the only ones that I ever had. The Chocolate Bonbons was the first one, and then I never purchased another one until Pumpkin Spice. I really wasn't interested in them, but I do like this formula. I love these tin packages. But none of the color stories in between or even after this one really grabbed for me as much. But this one, I think, has been my favorite color story that they've done, like, ever. I love the fact that there's so much more color in here than just your neutrals with a pop of one shade of pink or blue or pink or whatever it may be. I like the fact that you have a lighter side, you have a deeper side. It's definitely a year-round palette, but you can really focus on one side during a season if that's what you prefer, and you can obviously mix and match. And I think it is just a very smart color story, considering the fact that Too Faced really just sticks with very simple all neutral palettes with like one pop of a color. So this has definitely been my favorite color story from them. And then this is what is remaining from my Bonbons palette. Please don't mind the mess. I had a shadow break on me. I just don't know which one it was. So this is what is remaining from my Bonbons palette. I do have a photo of what it was looking like before. So, or I think I do. It's up there if I do have one. Now, the packaging kind of busted. So these were the shades that I depotted from that palette, the ones that I really wanted to get a lot more use on, hit pan, finish up, whatever it may be. The other shades I really wasn't interested in anymore, and I did have quite a few that were finished off already. So this is just my curated version of the Chocolate Bonbons palette, and I think it's so cute. The heart-shaped pans just kind of give it that over-the-top, but in a good way, cute look. This long slim pan just kind of like pulls everything together. The shades, the color, I just love this little curated color story that I ended up doing. So this is my Chocolate Bonbons, and this was my first tin package from them. I wasn't really interested in any of the other chocolate bar palettes, and still am not to this day, so I know that was a good thing. But these were the only two that I had. And then I ended up getting this Born This Way Sunset Stripped palette for Christmas. So this is the second one, and a part of me really still wants the first one. I was debating getting these when they were on sale at Sephora, and I never ended up doing it, and then I got this one for Christmas. So now that I have this one, a part of me really wants the first one. I know that this shade is like too deep for me, so I know I'm not going to get use on that. This one I might be able to get away with. It's a little bit deep. I'm not a fan of deep dark mattes or deep dark shimmers, but I might be able to pull this one off. We'll have to see. But I feel like the rest of the palette I'd be able to get some use on. Of course, you have your beige matte shades that I can use to set down my lid, so I would get use on that, no problem. But I think it's a very pretty color story. But having this one makes me want to get the original, the New Nudes, I think it's called. So we're going to put Too Faced away. We are going to move on to the next bunch. So let's chat here. So I have one palette from Nars, and this is the Afterglow palette. I just got this palette. I purchased it off of Poshmark, and I am happy that I have it now because, for one, I can actually test out the formula of their eyeshadows, because I haven't, well, I had one single, but it didn't really work out. And I've heard that this one was good. So I watched some reviews. People really enjoyed it. I saw some of the color stories that they came up with. And then I heard that a couple of the newer ones have been really good as well. So I decided to purchase this one off Poshmark. Now, I'm happy that I have it, but I'm slightly disappointed because this shade here has a little bit more of a dip in it than it looked like it was in the photo. Not that I was expecting it to be like perfect. It is Poshmark, so that's totally fine. But the dip was just a little bit more than what I was actually expecting from what the photo looked like. But I am happy that I have this, and I'm really excited to dip into this. Use this shade, this pink shade. I think this is kind of what grabbed me, giving this that little pop of fun and excitement. But I'm really excited to test out the shimmers in here. I do have a little 6-pan from Nars that has been in my wish list for years, and I haven't bit the bullet. I don't know if the formula is the same, but I've heard that this is a good formula, and like I said, some of their newer holiday releases have been a good formula, so I'm really hoping that I like this, and then maybe if they come out with some new ones with color stories that I actually enjoy, I will pick up a couple of others. So next we're gonna chat about Tarte. So I pulled this bad boy back into my collection. Last year I kind of decluttered it, but I still had it hanging around, and I kind of regretted getting rid of this at first, or decluttering it at first. So this shade here I used so much. This is the finger foil paints, and I loved using this shade. The reason why I decided to declutter it was more or less for these two, because again, they're too deep for me. But I feel like just the formula of these, I could probably blend them out enough to where I'm going to be able to make it work, or I can top it off with this shade to make it a little bit lighter. This glitter has a pan in it. This one doesn't. And at first I was always gravitating towards this one just because it was lighter. But again, I didn't really know anything about glitters. But now that I know that like there's glitter glue and stuff like that, I could probably get some use on this. I'm not the biggest fan of glitters, so I'm not gonna like use them all of the time on my eyelids. But knowing how I could make them stay and how to work them, I feel like I could get some more use on this, because I think this is super pretty. They both are beautiful. I was just always a little bit nervous about using them. So not that the nervousness has gone away, but I'd be a little slightly more comfortable. But it was mainly just these two, and I don't know, I feel like maybe I could get some use on it, and we'll just have to see. And if I don't, then at least it's a super pretty display piece for my collection. I think that the little stones on here are just beautiful. So if anything, it's just going to be a really pretty display piece. Next, my one and only Tartelette palette. This is the Tartelette Toasted, and I only purchased this, was it last year or maybe the year before? I really haven't used it all that often, but the packaging, I'm really disappointed in this. Now, I have dropped this a few times, so I don't know if that caused it at all or not. But what it did cause was a couple of these shades here at least to crack a bit, which is super disappointing, because this would like, it actually fell and like some of the shades fell out. So I'm not expecting it to be in perfect condition, but it is a little bit disappointing. But this is the palette that got me going on warm tones, and I only purchased it just recently. I was holding off for quite a while, and I'm not quite sure why, but I did, and I've only reached for it a couple of times, so I don't know what exactly about this palette, just kind of like the hype disappeared or something after I got it, but I did enjoy the looks that I created with it, so I would like to get some more use on this, just to show it a little bit more love, because the outside is showing a little bit of like deterioration, so I want the inside to match the outside best that I can. But one that does have a little bit more love on it is this Tartelette Pro palette. This is the original. I remember when I first bought this side down here, I reached for all of the time. You can see this shade up here, Classic. I completely finished that off. I used it as a lid setting shade. I really enjoyed it. These shimmers I enjoy. This shade here, I would probably skip over, and I could probably make this blue shimmer work, but it's a little bit deep for me. I do want to try and step out of my comfort zone just a little bit more this year when it comes to colors and even like the darkness of colors. So I feel like that would be a good start. But the rest of this, I feel like I could make some really good use on here. I was really happy and excited to know that I was still able to get really good use and use this shade up. It was still, like the formula still seemed very nice on it. I think it's, yeah, this shade, this palette dropped too, or something happened to it. So part of this shade kind of cracked and fell out, but you still have a lot of it in there. So I would like to focus on that shade and create some really pretty looks with it, and maybe even pair it with this Tartelette Toasted palette, because it is a warmer tone, and be able to get some really pretty looks just using those alone. All right, we're gonna chat about a couple of palettes from Essence. So I do really enjoy these little pan palettes that they have. So first we're gonna chat about my Rose Will Go On. When I bought this for personal reasons and not to actually be a part of my eyeshadow palette collection. It is just for display purposes only. Now, if I did decide that I wanted to use this palette, I would pick up a second one and use this one. This one will remain untouched. I do still have the plastic on here. This is just for personal reasons, but I did want it to show you guys because technically it is in my makeup collection, but it's not going to ever be used. Now, the other two that I have are very well used. So I have the Essence Bronze This Way palette, and I love these things so much. So I have finished off this beige matte shade here. I was using it to set down my lids. I had hit pan in this shade, as you can see. It's a little bit deep for me, so I was using it for my brows. But I think that this color story is super pretty. When I was kind of going through their palettes when they originally came out, because this one was like a second release. They released this one and a nudes one, which I want to pick up the nudes palette. But this Bronze This Way and the Coral Me Maybe palette, they were like the first original releases. So I decided to go with these two because the other color stories just didn't really grab me as much. I knew I wouldn't use the blues or the greens, and the purple one I was a little bit unsure of. Maybe in the future I feel like I'd get a little bit more use on it, but currently these two palettes are the ones that I just really love. I enjoy the formula. I think they're great. This coral palette is super pretty. I have pan in this shade. I really enjoy reaching for these, and I do like the shimmers. They're very pretty. They're simple, but they're pretty, and it's nice for just everyday looks. And I like pairing this palette with a couple of my other palettes if I really want to get more of like a coral tone. Sometimes I'll reach for this shade or just this palette in general. But I do really like these. And I'm happy that Essence has come out with them because I don't have a whole lot of drugstore makeup, but I'm happy that the drugstore is kind of starting to get a little bit more nice makeup, better makeup. But again, if I did want to actually reuse this palette, I will just end up purchasing a second one. They're like $5 in Canadian, so it's not breaking the bank or anything for me, so I would be okay with that one. So those are my three Essence palettes. Let's chat about some palettes that or some brands that I only have one palette from. So first is What's Up Beauty. This is the Geodes palette, and I was super curious about this palette when I first saw it released. And out of this one and the Desert Monsoon, I knew I would reach for this palette as a whole a lot more than I would the other one. As pretty as it was, there was just a few shades in there that I knew I wasn't going to get any use on, especially the blue. So I figured, why purchase that palette? I'll purchase this one where I know I'm going to use every shade in here. I haven't used it yet, but I'm super curious to see how it's going to work. I want to see how blendable these mattes are and how pretty these shimmers are, because I feel like it's going to be a very beautiful palette, and I'm really excited to get some use on that one. Speaking of drugstore, I have the Milani Everyday Eye Palette, and this one is in Bare Necessities. I think it was last year or the year before. I decluttered the other two that I had, but I held on to this one based off of Color Story because one of the other ones that I got rid of was a neutral palette as well, but it had a black, and I don't use black eyeshadows. So I figured I'd hold on to the one that had a brown that was a little bit more fitting for myself. And last year I wanted to pan this, and I never did. Mind you, I'm happy with the palette that I chose for my Pan That palette last year, but a part of me really wishes that I had reached for this one a lot more because I don't think I reached for it at all. And I really haven't gotten any use on it, haven't shown it any love, and it's getting up there in age. So I really want to somehow throw this into a project or something and not make it a focus necessarily, but just see what kind of usage I can get on this palette. Now, I don't want to necessarily make myself hit pan in this, but I just want to use it. I want to show it a little bit more love before it gets to the point where I have to get rid of it. And I just feel like this is something for some reason that I can't let go of. So I want to use it while I still can. Now, another palette from the drugstore is the Maybelline News of New York palette. And I think from what I've heard, this is supposed to be the drugstore version of the New Nudes palette. No, not New Nudes. the Born This Way Natural Nudes from Too Faced. So the first one out of the two. I like this palette. I wore this on Christmas morning. I had Globetrotter and Panthers eyeshadows last year, and I loved reaching for this shade. I just loved how blendable it was. I would use a fluffy brush, throw it on the outer corner, blend it into the crease, and it was so pretty. It was a very easy, simple, out the door kind of look or shade. But I feel like I just kind of stuck with like this side a little bit, maybe a couple over here, but I want to just reach for this palette as a whole a little bit more. I do feel like these two shades will be lid setting shades for me, and I have been debating pulling this in for the lid setting shade, but I do decide to skip onto something before I reach for this one. So this one might be coming up soon, but I would just like to get a little bit more use on this as a whole, but I really do enjoy the palette. I think it's beautiful. I have one palette from Unzai, and it is the Solmana 2 palette because this color story got me. When I saw swatches of this online, I thought it was the prettiest color story that Unzai had come out with for me, and still think so. So I am so happy. Like, I had thrown this in my cart, and when their Black Friday sale went live, it was like I checked out so fast. I'm so happy that I have this. I haven't used it yet, but I've swatched a few of the shades, and I have fallen in love with the swatches. And if this is one of their better formulas, I'm excited to see what they're going to come out with next. I didn't get their Christmas palettes this year. I was fine with skipping out on those ones, but if they come out with more color stories like this, or something similar, I feel like with the same formula, I think that I will probably be purchasing a little bit more from them in the future, but I just want to see what they come out with first. And of course, this packaging is just beautiful as well. It was just a palette that from the beginning when I saw it, I knew I wanted it in my collection, and I'm really happy that I was able to grab that during their Black Friday sale. Another palette that I had purchased now, and I'm really, really excited about, is this Sugar Dreams palette by Sugar Drizzle. Now, the thing with this palette is it's an all shimmer palette, and I'm not big on all shimmer palettes, but if I had to have one, this would be the one. Every shadow that I've used out of here, which is all of them except for this green, have turned out to be so beautiful. It is very simple to just throw it all over the lid and just run out the door with a one shimmer kind of look. Super easy for when I'm, working super early in the morning and I'm kind of running out the door. I like to use this shade, even to just give a look a little bit of a different take, or just throwing something in the inner corner just to give it a little bit of a pop of something fun, of something different. The shift on these shades are super pretty. A couple of these shades in the pan, you think they're one color, but when you put them on your lid, it's another. And I love this. I love this palette so much. I don't think I knew about this before they restocked it. And when I saw the color story swatched out, I knew I had to have this palette. And again, this is another one that I'm so happy I pulled into my collection, because I don't know what I would do without it. It's kind of one of those palettes where it's like, if I didn't have it, I'm sure I wouldn't feel like I was missing anything because I wouldn't have known. But now that I have it, if I didn't have it, I feel like I'd be a little bit lost. So we're going to go and move on to Huda Beauty. So I only have one of the 9-pan palettes, and this is the pink neon. As much as I've wanted the orange neon, I decided to go with the pink because pink is my favorite color. And out of the two, this is the one that I really wanted. I still wish I could get the orange neon because I think the color story is very pretty. But I really like this palette. Now, I've heard that the formula in these little 9-pans are different from their larger palettes. I have a few of their larger palettes, so I will show you those in just a little bit. But I don't think I would purchase another 9-pan palette. I do like this. You can see I have pan in that shimmer there. I used this in, I think it was the intro. I rolled it into my Alice in Wonderland project back in August of 2020 when I had started that. I had such a hard time trying to hit pan on here. So I just kind of rolled it out and decided to put it away. I really haven't reached for this palette much since then. I have used it a few times, but what I gravitate more towards is these light almost peachy toned pinks up here. I think those work really well for me. And then I really do enjoy these shimmers. I think they're beautiful. I am happy that I have this, and this is a palette that I'm not going to get rid of. I do want to use this, but I just haven't really felt the need to purchase another 9-pan palette, minus the neon orange, just color story wise. But I just haven't because I had a difficult time with that pink. And like I said, I've heard that the formulas are different than their larger palettes. So speaking of their larger palettes, I'm gonna show you this love of mine. This is Mercury Retrograde. If you watch my channel, you know that I'm using this. Whoops, sorry. You know that I'm using this for my panning solitaire project. So I'm gonna show you what it's looking like because there are no spoilers at the moment. But look at the amount of love that I have on this palette. And I am so happy with where this is at the moment. I've been using this for about a year, just at a very chill pace. I have used and loved so much of this. This shade right here is my absolute favorite. This Momentum shade I use to set down my lids. Supernova, you can see I'm almost finished. It's a very pretty topper. This shade right up here, Utopia, that is another coral shade that I will reach for if I want to throw a little bit of that kind of tone into a look. So I'll either reach for my Essence palette or this shade right here. I love this thing so much. Like, this is my baby. The color story really got me. The packaging really got me. As much as I'm not big on her eyes or her face being on the palettes, this one I was okay with because it was holographic, because it's just so pretty. And I'm so disappointed that the packaging broke. But in hindsight, the package breaking is what got me to use this palette. That's why I started panning solitaire. Every time I touch this, it's like my lighting just changes. That is why I started panning solitaire, because oh my God, what's going on? Because the packaging was like starting to fall apart, and I just wanted to get some use on this before I couldn't use it anymore. And I'm so happy that I did. So as disappointing as it was for the packaging to break and for all of that to happen, it has really shown me how much I love this palette, and it was a blessing in disguise. Now, another palette that I have that is full size is Rose Quartz. I haven't used this one yet, and I'm really starting to, I don't quite have that itch of wanting to just yet, but I feel like I'm starting to get there, and I do want to start to use it soon. So this is the packaging. This is the color story. She's beautiful. This is like a me color story as well. This is the one shade that I'm so iffy on. Now, I don't have the Naughty Nudes palette, and it was mainly for that shade. I was really debating it, and I was super disappointed when I found out that it was in this palette, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. I did see, I can't remember who it was now, but I did see somebody had depotted that shade and just threw in another shimmer shade into this palette. I haven't used this shade, so I don't know what it's like, and I don't know, like, just the look of it kind of weirds me out, but we'll have to see how I feel about it. I will try it at least once, but there's no promises. And the last one that I have is the New Nudes. Now, the reason why it's still in this packet, in like the plastic packaging, because I usually throw these boxes out as soon as I get them, is because I don't like the fact that her face is on here, and I honestly like this one so much better. So I just keep it in there for that. But this is what this one's looking like. Again, I haven't reached for this one yet because I just purchased this one not that long ago. This is that concealer shade, so I really don't know what I want to do with that one. Again, same with that weird shade in the Rose Quartz. I'm half debating just taking it out and pressing something else back into there. And then the glitters, I'm a little unsure about. I remember when this first came out, I was at Sephora and I was swatching it, but I could not justify the price of it. I got this one half price. That's why I picked it up. It was one that I have been curious about and interested in it since it released. So I didn't buy it just because it was half price. But I did, like, I wouldn't have purchased this at full price. I haven't purchased any of these ones at full price. So that's why I have them. But I'm not a big fan of her face on this. So I'm happy that the Rose Quartz palette doesn't have her eyes on here. But this is gonna go back into the actual box because I just prefer that packaging so much better. And a part of me has like even debated cutting this out and just kind of like sticking it on top so I could get rid of the rest of the box. But I don't think I'll do that. So next, we're gonna chat a little Natasha Denona. So I ended up getting these two off of Poshmark just recently. Now, the reason why I decided to get these was because I have a couple of these mid-size palettes and I didn't realize that the pan sizes were different. So I watch Lunar Beauty and she loves to curate her own color stories and she likes to rearrange her palettes. Now, what I thought was I could take these 5-pan palettes, take some shades out of the mid-size ones, put them in here, create a little color story, and go from there. Now, technically I can because the mid-size palette, those pans are smaller. So they will fit in here. There's just going to be room around the pan. So it was a little bit disappointing, but I mean, it is what it is. But I'm really happy that I have these because this coral palette was one that I was debating purchasing off of Beautylish. And just like these shades on this side, I just can't stop staring at. I love these 3 shades. I've swatched them all and they're all very pretty. These are a touch too dark for me, but I feel like I could probably make them work. I don't know if it would necessarily be with this palette. I feel like I'd probably reach for these 2 shades and reach for another palette to use with it. Maybe this palette. This is the Peak palette and this is all matte. So I feel like I could get some use out of this like deeper shimmer with this color story because this is the only shimmer that's in here. But I really do enjoy looking like the look of this shade. I do like this color story as well. Again, you have a lid setting shade, so I know I'd get a lot of use on that one. And I could get a lot of use on this palette as a whole too. So I am happy that I have these. I was really only intending on purchasing one of these full size, or not full size, but these 5-pan palettes, but I ended up with 2. I am still debating the Camel palette. It is just the all neutral palette, but I think I'm okay with where I'm at right now. So we're going to start off with the one that I purchased first of the mid-size palettes. This is the Natasha Denona Love. And I bought this one. It was half price. And I wasn't too sure how I felt about the color story. Now, when I purchased this one, the retro palette was already out. And a couple of the other ones were. And I wanted to test out the formula, but I didn't want to pay full price. So when this one went half price, I picked it up. And I was happy that I did because I tested out the formula and I really enjoyed how this one worked for me and how some of the colors, the shades turned out for me. Now this color story isn't the greatest. I could rearrange it, but I don't really feel like it at the moment. But I have popped them out and I've written the shade names and the palette that it was from on the back of the pan. So if I did decide to do that, I could put it back into its original order. Now, I've heard that this formula is a little bit different than some of her other mid-sized ones and is not as great. So if I like this, I feel like the other ones are going to be even better. So I am happy that I have this palette. And there's a couple of shades in here that I was hoping to kind of like create a little 5-pan palette with. So I am happy that I have this palette. Now, I did end up purchasing the retro palette. I bought this one in April of 22 and my birthday is at the beginning of March, but I made this my birthday gift to myself. And I haven't used it yet, but I've swatched a few of these shades and it's so pretty. So I'm really happy that I have this palette. This I feel like is a very like everyday palette. I could get some really nice looks out of it, and this psychedelic shade, so pretty. I'm really excited to wear that one all over the lid or in the inner corner. And I feel like so many of these rosy tone shades are just beautiful. Like, I was a little burnt out on them for a little bit, but I keep bringing them into my collection just because there's something that I really do enjoy about them, and I really do like how they look. So the Sunrise palette, now I bought this one off of Poshmark recently. When the Love palette went on sale, so did this one. I did have a chance to purchase it at that time, but I didn't because I wasn't interested in it. So why did I purchase it now? Well, I was really debating it, but I fell in love with the color story a little bit more now than I did a couple of years ago. And then after I purchased this and I got it home and I opened it up, I fell in love with these 3 shades right here and even this one. I'm so excited to reach for this palette just to do a look with these shades. I don't know what it is, but I'm just like that's just where my eyes, that's just where I gravitated to. That's where I zoned in on. The rest of it is super pretty. I'm excited to test out these yellows, some of these lighter shades as well. This one down here. But for some reason, this right here, like especially this trio, but this one too, I just can't stop staring at it every time I open up this palette. And I'm just so excited to get some use on it. Actually, this shade's a little bit deeper right now in person than it is on camera, but this shade right here, I'm super excited to test out too. So I am happy that I have this one now. I probably could have been okay without it because I didn't know what I was missing until I had it in my collection, like just staring at those 3 shades. But I am happy that I have this one. And then last, I just got in the other day the Natasha Denona pastel palette. This packaging is so pretty. So there's a few shades in here that I'm really excited to test out and try as well. So of course it's like the pink shades, this peach shade, the yellow down here, like this mint shade right here. This illusion shade is going to be so pretty from what I can see in the pan. I would like to take a few of my palettes and kind of rearrange and create my own color story, get that Lauren May Beauty vibes going. So I think I might do that, and because the packaging on this one is so pretty, this is probably going to be like my custom palette. Maybe one day, not anytime soon, but I would like to try to do something like that. And I do like the fact that the Natasha Denona palettes, like they come with these little holes in the back so you can actually pop something out and you don't feel like you're breaking all of your shadows, because that's been happening. So actually, let's chat a little bit here. We're gonna chat about Gimme Glow, because this is actually, let's show you the Pastel Dreams palette first. This is the first one that I bought, and they are magnetic, but when I tried popping them out, you can see just this shade alone that it was cracking and little bits were falling out. So it is magnetic, but they're a little more difficult to depot, and I was really hoping that I could kind of mix and match some of these shades with some of the other palettes from Gimme Glow that I have. And technically I can, but I don't know if I'm going to anymore, just because of how difficult it was to get these out, and I don't want them to crack and break any more on me than they already are. Now, this palette as a whole is my heart. I love it so much. You can see the dips that I have in a couple of these shimmers here. But when I use this palette, I use every single shade. So I have done looks where I've done 3 shades on one eye, the other 3 shades on the other eye, and I use the shimmers and the matte. So I have literally used every single shade in here in one day. So a lot of the times I will go blue, purple, and green for one look, and then the peach, pink, and yellow on the other eye. I don't know what it is with this palette, but this is like the pastel palette of my dreams. Like, Pastel Dreams is the perfect name for this palette because it is everything. Now, even though I just purchased the Natasha Denona one, I don't think it's going to live up to the love that I have of this palette, and that's okay. But this is really the only pastel palette that I'm going to ever need in my collection, and I am so happy that I have this because this is something that I would be missing without knowing it, and I'm happy that I have this one. So I ended up purchasing the Coral Nightlife palette. Mine's gonna look different. If you know, there was a situation. So these 2 shades right here, Pretty Little Lilac and Electric Mint, I think. These are the 2 shades that I chose to put in this palette. One was to replace the shade that they had issues with, and the other one was to replace a duplicate shade that is also in Summer Vibes. Now, this is very like, I'm disappointed in myself because this is what Summer Vibes looks like. It's messy. So this shade right here, Mango Margarita, was in this palette. I noticed that it was in both, and this was like half price. So I bought them both at the same time, and I had asked if it was possible to replace Mango Margarita in this palette because it was in here and I didn't need to. She said yes, so I chose one of these 2 shades here. After I got this palette, I realized that this shade right here, sorry, I'm not pointing to it, but this orange soda pop in the middle there is that shade right there. And between Mango Margarita and orange soda pop, I would much rather have 2 Mango Margarita shades because I know I'm going to get use on it. I'm probably not going to use orange soda. And I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't catch that sooner. I think I was just kind of like glancing over it, noticed the name twice for Mango Margarita, and that was about it. I really should have like taken the time and actually compared. Not that I thought that there was going to be any overlap, but when I found out that there was, I should have really looked a little bit more. So I am super disappointed in that, but that's all on me. So I'm really happy with how this color story is looking. I did have Mango Margarita in here, but I decided to just kind of put it back the way that it was and have this palette look the way that it is as a whole. Now, this Summer Vibes palette, there's a lot of shades in here that I wanted as singles. All of these neutral shades, Mango Margarita especially being one of them, this sunny shade down here, and pretty much the rest of these neutral shades. So when this one half price, I knew I had to purchase it. I think this one was released first, and then you were able to add this palette or one of the other ones, Wheat and Sticky, I think. So yeah, anyways, long story short, I ended up getting these two at the same time, and I'm happy that I have those. Let's chat. So I have one little duo from Kevin. Everything's just jumping out of my hands today. One little duo from Kevin Aucoin. This I was using as a contour shade. This one I've only reached for a couple of times, but I really haven't used it. It's a very light pink, but I would like to get a little bit more use on this sometime this year, just like this duo as a whole. Maybe finish this off eventually and just try to hit pan in this shade. This did take a while to hit pan on. It is kind of a deep pan. So it is something that's going to just kind of hang around in my collection. I'll maybe use it when I feel like it or remember, but I do tend to kind of forget about it just because it is so tiny. But I feel like if I kind of have it with my daily makeup, I might be able to remember it just a little bit more. Another really little palette that I have is the one and only Lorac palette that I've ever owned. This one is in Winter Rose, and I love this color story so much. I'm just going to take this little sheet out. It is so pretty. So I was debating between this one and a few others, and I think there's one, I can't quite remember the name of it, but it is very, very similar to this color story. But I think this one was the holiday release for 21, so I ended up going with this one. And I love the fact that it's so small, especially because this is the first time I've used Lorac. I have worn this a couple of times, and I'm really excited about like getting a lot more use on it. This is a palette that I want to completely finish off, and then I'm debating purchasing a couple of the other little ones, but not until I have shown a lot more love to this little one and hopefully even finished it off by then. And then I will probably throw a little bit of money towards purchasing a couple of other of those. I have one Becca palette. This is the eyelight. So this was like some of their highlighters thrown into eyeshadows. I have shown this bad boy a lot of love lately, and I'm so happy about it. I do use these as highlighters for the most part. These two shades here, Opal, Moonstone, Even Rose Quartz, I'm using those as highlighters. This shade right here, which I think is Toasted, no, it's Hot Cocoa. I used to wear that as a one shadow look all over my lid and just go out the door. It is so pretty that way. I would mainly use that just in the winter time. And then these I really haven't used too much, but I want to get a lot more love on those too. But I really am happy with how this palette's looking like. Okay, we're gonna go and chat about some Glamlite because I enjoy Glamlite. Let's move some of this out of the way here. So first, we're gonna chat about the Happy Hour collection. I only have two. I purchased the Chocolate Martini and the Margarita palette. These were on sale, so I snapped them up, and am I happy that I did. I haven't reached for this one yet, but I am so excited to put this on my eyes. This shade right here, Extra Lit, like I haven't even wanted to swatch it because I'm just waiting to put it on my lids first and just like enjoy that experience. But I am like, this is just so beautiful to me. I'm so happy that I have this. I'm really excited to reach for this one and get some really good use on this. Now this Margarita palette, I had this in one of my projects and I used it 10 times. I was really reaching for this shade right here quite a bit and pairing it with like this little peachy tone shade and even these neutrals. A little bit of like this yellow, I think. I tried these three in a look, but it didn't quite go the way I was hoping. So I just kind of stuck to this side, but I really enjoyed this palette. So I'm hoping to get a lot more use on it come summertime. I was using it in the fall, so that's probably why I was still reaching for it, but not as much as I would in the bright times of year. I ended up purchasing this palette, and I only purchased it recently because now is when I feel like I'm gravitating towards this color story opposed to when this first came out. I'm not interested in the second part. It's half green, half purple. Don't really care. This one though, I feel like I could get a lot of use on, especially like these first two rows, this row right here. Even the bottom two rows, I could really mix and match and get some really good colors out of this. So I'm happy that I have this now, and I just love the glitter on the top, the front. It's super cute. But like I said, this is the only one that I really wanted at this time. The second part, I just really don't care about. So that's this one. And then probably my favorite so far is the Ice Cream Dream palette. I threw this into Deck of Panning for the Joker at one point, and I went well past what my goal was. I loved reaching for this palette so much. Of course, there's a few shades in here that I'm a little unsure about, kind of these ones down here. They're just not really like my kind of colors. But this palette as a whole was just so beautiful. It was one that I just couldn't stop reaching for. So when I did stop reaching for it, I really haven't picked it up since then, but I know that when I do that, I'm just going to continue to use it, and that's what I like about it. Just I know that I'm going to enjoy it every time. So we still have a few to go here. We're gonna chat Blend Bunny next. So the first two that I purchased was the Dollhouse and Surge. So this is Dollhouse, super pretty. I love this color story. Colorful yet very subtle and light, which I really enjoy. These two shades, that's all I need in this palette, to be honest. I have worn just those two so many times, and I've loved it each and every time. It's just the prettiest. I will sometimes throw that in the outer corner just to deepen it a touch, but it is very pretty. I really enjoyed this row. This is just such a pretty color story, and I'm so happy that they came out with that because it was something that I didn't have in my collection. But the Surge palette, you guys, this is my favorite color story in my whole collection, like hands down. This neon row down here is what grabbed me so much, so I ended up purchasing it. They were both, they had a sale sometime last year, so I ended up buying both of them. But this shimmer row right here, after I got this, I just fell in love with the color story even more. And I'm so happy that I have this. It is absolutely my favorite color story in my whole collection. This took a little bit of building up, both of these. I did a look where I used, same as my Pastel Dreams, I used these three on one eye, these three on the other, used a couple of the shimmers. It took a long time to build up, which was kind of disappointing. But all in all, I still really enjoyed the look, and I'm excited to get a lot more use on that one in the future. And then the last one, brand new to my collection, is the Blends palette. So this one isn't all matte, but because you have so much variety in here, I don't have an issue with this being an all matte palette like I do with the Little Ray of Sunshine palette from Colourpop. Of course, there's shades in here that I'm not going to reach for. Some of these, not all, but this black I won't, the gray I won't, this dark blue I probably won't, but at least I have it if I need to reach for it for something. So that is that. And then I think we still have a few more to go here. So we're going to chat about some more one-off palettes. This is the Care Bears palette by Violet Voss. I am in love with this palette. Every time I've used this palette, I've created like so many different looks just with this palette alone. I've loved every one of them. You can see there's a little dip here in Champ Bear. I enjoy this, and I'm so happy that I have this palette. This one's kind of made me want to try more Violet Voss, but I think I'm okay just sticking with the one that I have right now. Kaleidos, I have the Astro Pink palette. This is the Futurism 3, if I can open it. And I really love this color story. Now again, the black is super cool because it's got the silver in it, but I don't use black eyeshadow. So it's really just these 4 shades here that I really enjoy using. I do have a bit of a dip in these 2. This one all over the lid is beautiful. And I do like this blue too, but it is a little bit difficult for me to use because it's kind of out of my comfort zone. So I would like to try and get some use on it at some point. But I do like this color story so much. Now, Beauty Bay Pastels palette, I'm unsure about what I want to do with this one. I was debating passing it along, but I held on to it for a little bit longer. So we'll see if I get much use on it in the spring or summer this year. And if not, then I do feel like this is going to be something I pass along towards the end of the year. The Uma Beauty Royal Heritage palette, I do have the insert for this too because it's super cute. I had this in a project and I used every shade in here without realizing it at least once, except for this one, I think. And I liked how it worked. I liked the looks that came out of it. I liked pairing these shimmers with other mattes that I have in my collection. So I'm really happy that I have this one. And the color story out of all of them, this is the color story that really grabbed my attention. BH, I only have one palette from, so this is Sugar Cone, the neutral palette out of the Sweet Shop collection. I really wanted the orange one, and then a part of me kind of wanted the Cotton Candy, which was like the pink and purple one. I'm okay with not having those now. I am happy that I have this one though. And I found that like the green palette, the blue palette, their darkest matte shade was a little bit too dark for me. Not that I would wear greens and blues, so I don't need like a monochromatic palette for each of those, but I'm happy that this brown shade doesn't go too deep because those other ones went way too dark for my preference. So I'm happy with the tones in this palette and I like using this one a lot, and I feel like these two are a little bit too similar. They probably could have done something different here, but it is what it is. I'm so happy with what this palette's like. Now, we're gonna chat Melt. So I have the Retroactive palette. I don't know what I wanna do with this. I was thinking once I came up with the idea of creating like the magnetic or the empty magnetic palettes with those Colourpop ones, I thought maybe I could do that with these since these are apparently magnetic as well. But I do want to try and get some use on this palette again and just see how I like it. But this packaging is so cool. I think it would be pretty awesome to have as a empty magnetic palette if it's possible. Now I have the Gemini palette, which I do like. This one, I just find it's a little bit easier to blend out the mattes. I'm not a fan of the shimmers, but the mattes I do enjoy a lot more. Now I also have the Rest palette, but I am kind of mid-selling it at the moment, so I don't actually have it with me. I thought I brought it home, but I think it's still at work. So that one was one where if I wasn't able to get rid of it, I would keep it in my collection and I would be okay with that, but I think I'm mid-selling it at the moment, so it may not be here for long. We also have one by Urban Decay. This is the Naked Honey palette, and I love this. I haven't used it in a while, but this was a palette that I could just one and done, and I would honestly use every single matte in here, and it would just blend out so easily, build up so easily. I found it just gave me like the prettiest look, and then I would pair shimmer with it, and I was out the door. I really want to start to use this more because I really enjoyed how it looked. I do have a Marc Jacobs palette in here. I'm not going to open it because one of the shades is broken, but this is the Stiletto palette. It is a cool tone palette. I'm going to try and repress the broken shade, but I really don't reach for this, but I haven't wanted to get rid of it, so I don't know what I'm going to do with this one just yet, but we'll see how that one shade works out. Pat McGrath, I have two. So this one I have not used yet, but the little flat part kind of broke off, so it just opens this way. But I've never used this. I'm starting to not be sure about what I want to do with this one either. I was like just gonna hold on to it, told myself I was gonna use it, but now I'm not quite sure. There's only one matte in here and a lot of their shimmers. So I'm kind of unsure about what I want to do with this one. I am debating trying to pass it along. This one is, I think it was a holiday release from 2019. Now I have to be careful because I took a couple of the shades out because it is a magnetic palette, but the shades don't magnetize in here. I don't know, it's super weird. Let's hold it this way. Maybe this will work a little bit better. So I have Pan in this shade because I had this in Pan Those eyeshadows. This shade and this shade here were the ones that I also depotted, so it was just those three. And I have such good dips in there. I want to hit Pan and use up those three shades. Maybe use a little bit of this, but after that, I'm calling it quits with this palette. I'm not going to reach for these two. I really don't care about those two shades so much. So it's mainly just these three and then maybe this one as well. I'll see how much use I can get on that. But once I have felt like I've used this palette enough, then I will get rid of it. And because I've depotted those shades, I might take them out and stick them into a magnetic palette. Whether or not I need to buy those little magnets, I don't know. But that may be an option for that too. Lethal Cosmetics, I have the After Dark palette, which is like their 90s vibe, which is super cute. I love this. The only reason I keep the sleeve is because that's where the names of the shades are. So I do enjoy this palette. I haven't used it really, but there's a few shades in there that like I wanted as singles, so I'm holding on to that one for sure. And then the Velvet Dusk, I was a little unsure about. I was debating getting rid of this one as well, and it's just this one shade that I really wanted as a single. And I could see myself using like half of this palette, but it's a little bit too deep for me. I like that it's deep and dark and a little bit grungy, but at the same time, I know I'm not going to use this shade. I'm probably not going to use this one. I don't think I'm going to use this. Maybe this shade. I don't know how I feel about this palette as a whole. And I purchased both of these palettes together as a bundle I got them separately because I think you could get them cheaper if you bought them individually than they were in a bundle. So I don't know. We'll see what I end up doing with the After Dark palette or the Velvet Dusk palette. Now, Lunar Beauty, I have the original Life's a Drag palette, and I started reaching for this one when I threw this shade into a project, and I was reaching for these neutrals, and I fell in love with them all over again. So I got really excited because I asked for a nude prism palette for Christmas, and those just kind of like got me super excited about wanting that palette and just using Lunar Beauty again because it had been a while since I'd reached for this. This side I don't really reach for, but these two shades here, when I did get this palette and I started pairing yellow and pink together, this is the palette that got me doing that. After I had paired those two shades together and I saw how pretty it looked on the eyes, I started pairing pink and yellows together. So this was the palette that started that for me. Now, I do have the Nude Prism palette here, but I did not get this for Christmas. I purchased this off Poshmark as well. So I have swatched a few of these shades. The shimmers look super pretty. These two I'm not quite sure about. A couple of these shades remind me of those neutral shades there in Life's a Drag, but I do like the fact that they have this top row here because it's super pretty. I'm really excited about this shade and pairing it with a lot of these other mattes, so I'm happy that I have this one in my collection now. And then I think we only have a few more to go through because I don't think I talked about Sigma and Kaja. So we're gonna go through these quickly here. I do have a few of the bento boxes from Kaja. The first one that I purchased was Hella Azalea, which I was kind of surprised because this is like a pink and purple one, but it is so pretty. And every time I have worn this, which was a lot in the summer of 21, I got so many compliments every time. So I'm very happy that I purchased these. This one is a Lotta Colada, which is a neutral one, and I like the fact that these have shimmers and mattes because I feel like I could get a lot more use out of it and just get more of a full look with these ones. These other two that I have, I just purchased off Poshmark. They are the all shimmer ones. So this one is Rose Water, but I am happy that I have these now because online they look a little bit different, and this last shade here just looked a little bit too deep online, but it's not as bad as I thought. And then Orange Blossom is just so pretty, and I feel like it's perfect just to top off some sort of like sunset vibe look. And even this last shimmer down here, again, it's not as deep as it looked in the photos online. So I am happy that I have those ones. Sigma, did I go over Sigma with you guys? I'm sorry if I did, but if not, I'm just going to go through them very quickly with you. So I have Warm Wishes, which was this year's holiday release. Very pretty. I'm so happy that I have these. I got these on such a good deal. There was no way I could pass them up. The Magnifique palette is a little bit too deep for me, especially this shade right here, but I think I'm going to hold on to it. I'm not quite sure if I want to get rid of it just yet because I just got it, but it is one that I'm kind of unsure and I'd be okay with passing along, I think. The Spicy palette was a free palette that came with that order, and I'm happy that it was this one. This color story online, of course, looks a little bit different, but in person, I prefer it so much more, and I love how it looks, and I love the shimmers. And then, of course, I had to get a full size, so I went with the Corta Rosa palette. Now, when this first released, I really wasn't interested in this palette at all. It wasn't up until recently that something about this just started to attract me to it, and it's the little pops of the coral and the pink in here, I think. This shade, I was almost going to purchase this, like the 7-pan palette of this one, but the shade wasn't in there, so I went with the full size. I am happy that I do have the full size one though, because I did want one to test out. And I would prefer to have like all of the colors, all of the shades from the palette, and I'm happy that I went with this one. If I do purchase one of those smaller ones, it might be the Warm Neutrals palette. I'm not quite sure, but those are the ones that I have from Sigma. And then I do have some Viseart. So if you know, you've seen this, you know, this was my Pan That palette for 22, and I have finished this palette off. So why do I still have the packaging and why am I showing you? Because this Warm Edit palette, long story short, I took it out of here and I now have like combined them into these two palettes. So this Midsummer packaging is just the Warm Edit palette, some of the shades, more of the warm yellow, red, peachy tone shade, or the yellow tone shades. The Solstice palette, I do still have 4 shades from the original Solstice palette in here. And then the others are from the Warm Edit palette. So I figured that it kind of rounded out the remainder of the palette. So these 4 shades right here are from the Solstice palette. And then this shimmer, and then these 2 shades are from Warm Edit. So I would like to get like these completely finished off for this year because I love the Solstice, but it's the Warm Edit that really was giving me trouble. So I just want to finish it off just to get the Warm Edit out of my collection. And then I have the Violet Etendu palette, which I want to get a lot more use on as well this year. I love this color story. These shades are so pretty. I'm so excited about this one, pairing it with this, and just using some more of these neutral shades. I had this one in a project and I liked it. It was a little bit too deep for me in a way, but if I lighten it up, it's not a big deal. I can make it work for myself. So I'm really excited about getting a lot more use on this one. And then I think we only have 3 palettes left, which are 3 new ones to my collection. I just had to spend a little bit to throw me over that Rouge limit at Sephora. So these are the 3 that I purchased. The first one is the Supreme Nudes by Artist Couture. When this one half price, I was so close to buying it, and every time it was like out of stock. And then the one time it was in stock, I had to go to work and I missed it. So I bought it, but I'm so happy that I did. This is such a beautiful color story, and I swatched a lot of these shades and they're so, so pretty. So I'm very happy that I have this one, and that magnetic closure just gets me. If you like a good magnetic closure, that palette has one. I bought the Ethereal Eyes by Makeup by Mario, and even though this is so new to my collection, I've worn this like 2 or 3 times already. I love this so much more than I was expecting. This shade right here, this shade, I would pair these 2 mattes together. I think that's what I wore last night. And it was so pretty. It was just something about it that was just like, I think I had this one all over my lid the first time I wore it. And it was like, that's all that was on the lid. I had a couple of these in the crease and that was it. And it was just such a pretty look. I really enjoyed how that one turned out. And then Patrick Ta, this is the original Major Dimensions. Now, even though I had tried wearing this one last night, I was having issues with my eyes. So I ended up testing out this palette as well. And I only wore a few of the shades. I think I dipped into these two and then these two shimmers. And I did like it. I think it was really pretty. I was debating purchasing the Major Dimensions 2 for my birthday if I liked this. So I do want to get some more use on this, test this out a little bit more. And if I do like it, then I will purchase the second one, which is the rosy toned version for my birthday. This does come with 2 creams, but I'm probably not going to reach for the creams because I don't like them. But other than that, I'm really happy that I have this palette and that I can test it out and see how much I like it compared to how much everybody else just seems to rave about those palettes. So that is everything. I'm sorry that this is such a long video, but I'm glad I was finally able to get through this. I don't know about you, but I love binge watching these lately, and the longer sometimes the better for me. I just like to have them on. I like to see what other people have in their collection. If you did make it this far, I thank you so much and I appreciate it so much. Throw a dragon emoji down there just because I'm curious to see if you've made it that far. But yeah, that is everything. So the palettes that I'm unsure about, I will see if I use them or if I test them and if I like them or not, and then that's going to determine what I do with them. But I'm happy with where my collection is sitting at right now. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see about those palettes that I'm unsure about and if I weed them out and if I feel a lot happier and rounded out with my collection. And we will see what happens to be brought into my collection this year. I'm going to try and not purchase anything until my birthday, which is in March. So I will be placing an order at Sephora anyways for something there, and then we'll see sometime down the line. I was really good last year up until about summer. I purchased something during the spring sale. It was the retro palette by Natasha Denona. I was good. I bought that, maybe a couple of like basic stuff, and then once summer hit and they started coming out with sales, like indie brands and everybody started coming out with all these sales, that's when it started going downhill. So I'm gonna try and have a little bit more control this year. Black Friday was a little intense compared to the year prior. I didn't purchase anything from Black Friday up until April of this past year. So I did really well, and I'm hoping that I can keep that momentum up again. I have lots that I need to get through. I have lots that I want to completely use up this year, or try and just use up like within the near future, whether that's next year. Get a lot more use and a lot more pans showing in my collection, and I'm really excited to see where this is going to be looking towards the end of this year. So I do these once a year. We'll have to see what it's looking like next year when I do this, but again, thank you guys so much for everything, for watching, and I will see you guys all later. Bye.